Welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Inside Track. Got a fascinating guest this morning, Connor Thorne from Extreme Leisure Services. How are you, Connor?
Great, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. And as always, my trusty sidekick, Dr. G, Glenda Rivoallan. How are you?
Really good. I'm very excited for this one. I know that you know that, Ryan.
Absolutely. We will caveat it quickly, just so everybody knows. Glenda is travelling again in Crete, hence the background. She's not in her lovely home in Jersey today. She's out in the sunny climes of Crete. So we'll just caveat that now. So yes, welcome, Connor. So over to you, Glenda.
Well, I just want to start by saying it's a real privilege. I think, Connor, we've spoke about getting you on the podcast for the last 12 months. But
yes.
Actually, it's been great that we've waited a bit of time because you will have more to tell us. And I think what I'd like to start is by saying that a lot of people who know me know that part of my journey, I was very fortunate to sell my last business to an Anytime Club, of which you were the purchaser. So it's a real privilege to have you, Connor. I want to start by saying for all the listeners out there that this is one to listen to because I'm absolutely fascinated by your journey. And you might be young in your years, Connor, but you've just done so much in a short time. And I think it's massive inspiration for people out there who might be really fascinated to know, the journey for someone going from 0 to 4 clubs. It's just such an amazing story. So, Connor, just to start us off, really, could you give the guys out there a wee bit of background of how you did physically go from 0 clubs to having 4 Anytime Clubs? And it's happened in quite a short time, right?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind couple of years, actually. From school and then straight into, I know, the path that a lot of people follow into university, being unsure about it, having a focus on business from a young age, from family members and being brought up in that sort of environment. Going away to Bristol for university, whilst there discussing with my father about business, always wanted to go into it together, but going on that route that, like I was saying, that everyone does. But then was focusing on property, building a portfolio in that, and saw an opportunity to enter into the fitness industry together, which we've always had a passion for, really, really focused on it sort of personally, and always wanted to go into work together, but necessarily going into a franchise and going into that model wasn't a discussion topic that we ran through very much. But in my final years at university, and after coming out of a placement with a pharmaceutical firm, we decided to go for it with the first club in close to our hometown in Ringwood, down south. And that was in December 2018. Started all the process of building. We actually built the site for that one and promoting from June 2018. And then from there, just used the growth of that company to roll into the next, really, for gyms. Found the effect that you have on a community and as a business is a really nice sort of benefit of both sides of it. If you do it correctly, you can have a successful, profitable business, but you can also have a massive impact on the community around that site. So really focused on that from our first club, expanded it, and from the success of that, a lot of people didn't think it would be a wise idea to open so close to us, but we decided, viewing a site actually for another of the manufacturing side of a different business, we decided actually this would make a really, really good gym. So 6 miles down the road, wow. 12 months later, decided, go for it. Opened Anytime Fitness Ferndown. And that was within 12 months. And then this is when it got a bit crazy with, we all know, the pandemic and things opening and closing. And we opened Ferndown in 2019, end of November. We're open for about 4 months, and then all of the closures and things started happening. We had to make 2 decisions then. It got to a position of being profitable, but obviously as a direct debit business went from 100% income to 0.02. So that was a challenge, but we could have either tried to escape through, focus on getting out the other side of the pandemic and just having the 2 clubs, or double down and try and use that as an opportunity to grow within that period. And keep me busy as well, because there wasn't much else going on. So fortunately, we got the information through about Solgenic Club in Jersey. For us, being by Southampton, it's easy really for me to get there, easier than getting to London. Had a few meetings with yourself, Glenda.
Yeah.
We worked really well together and sort of had the same approach to fitness and how we wanted to expand within the brand, and really focus on building something which has got longevity. And then you'll have to remind me the exact dates, but I have a feeling it was September
2020.
Yeah, September 2020. So that was another, So we're getting faster and faster in opening the clubs as we go. So September 2020, took over Solgenic in Jersey and started to pre-sale and promote from there. And then thinking we were out the other side, clearing away, ready to open in December 2020. Then Jersey States decided to lock everything down the week before we had 800 members ready to use their new club, and had to put all of their memberships on hold until March 2021, when we opened there. And then finally, because we'd opened on one of the islands and Guernsey popped up, and we thought, well, if we're not going to do it now, somebody else is going to do it. So I want to get in there first and make sure that we're in control of the offering on the Channel Islands and make sure that that quality and that sense of community can expand from within. And went full steam ahead to a converted bowling alley in Guernsey, just in St. Sampson, and opened there in November 21. So yeah, it's been a busy 4 years.
Just quickly before we move on, in terms of the sort of what it's like to be a business owner in fitness, what made you go with the franchise? What was that? I mean, obviously straight out of uni, working with your dad. What made you go, right, we're going to go franchise rather than we're doing this ourselves? What was the...
It's quite a question that I get a fair bit, actually, because franchising, I think people skate around it quite a lot and don't understand the benefits fully of it. In an industry like the fitness industry, we 100%, I know we could have opened our own club. It would have been essentially the same size site, but we wouldn't have fully known how to fill it because we would have been coming from one perspective of what we'd trained in before. A franchise, the benefit once we analysed it and looked at open solely by itself, so for a franchise, is they've made the mistakes. So if they've made the mistakes in such a big industry and a competitive industry where you've got the likes of Pure Gym Group with massive funding behind them, if you really want to get ahead straight away rather than trying to build fully from the ground up, it does help with that. Also, the connections with brands, you have a lot more power. We knew that going in. I'd like to pride ourselves on being quite good negotiators, but from a big standpoint of coming from a franchise of that size, it does carry a lot of weight with it. And
of course it does. It just those guys know they're going to get continued business, so the discounts they give to the brands is huge.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a massive point of it, and I would have had to research a lot more into tech in regards to. We would have opened a site, but it wouldn't have been 24 hours because there was a lot of opportunity to, well, you can do this 24-hour route, you can do a code, you can do a fob, you can do, there's so many out there and so many tech providers. I think we might have been taken on a little bit of a song and a dance by different suppliers because we'd be coming from a naive viewpoint of, we need that, we must have this, we must.
That's how I make a living, Connor.
I'm sure there was so much to consider, and having that blueprint allowed us to, especially myself, know that was in hand, but focus on building the community and the quality aspect of it. If you know that it's a proven model and those aspects are covered, you can really focus on a one-to-one basis of finding the right people, building that and communicating that to the surrounding demographic and building naturally.
It's also things like your SOPs and stuff like that. They're all there. So when you're training staff, I mean, even down to your staff training, obviously I've worked with Anytime, and but the same applies across the board with most franchises. It's there for you. So all the hard work that you would have to sit and write all those SOPs, you'd have to make sure it's just not. You can literally pick it up, and as investors like you guys who just want to roll out, obviously make money out of it. This is the whole thing about it. You can put your stance on it. but not have to worry about the little things that were already there. And
Exactly.
That's the great thing. So you can still have your personality, which I'm sure Glenda will go on to. Glenda's told me all about it, so I know all about your club without ever having to meet you. But yeah, you can do that. You can put your stamp on it without having all that faff that it does. It takes ages to get all that in place.
Something I just want to pick up on, actually, though. You know, Connor, you were the purchaser and I was the seller. And I think our listeners would be really fascinated, right? Because when I tell people about the story, people get a bit, they always think there's a hidden agenda if you want to sell your business, right? But I'm a lot, and I don't mind saying this, but I'm a bit older than you. And I keep telling people that in my journey, I was ready to pass what was a good club on to people who could make it even better. And I'm not shy in saying that. I think that's really, really inspiring that I knew what you and your dad, Steve, the two of you together are such a formidable team that I knew that you could scale it up into the Channel Islands, do an amazing job and build on the good work that I had done. And I was ready for that, right? So that's from the seller's point of view, right? And you were obviously an amazing match as the purchaser. But I think it's really fascinating for people out there to hear that journey can be a really good one, because I look back on our journey and think, oh my goodness, yes, it could have went the other way, but at every turn we just worked as a team, and it just was an amazing experience. And I know I share that a lot with you and Steve about it's one of the most memorable things in my career, and it's only with positivity and really amazing memories, because we really did leverage the strengths, didn't we? And
yes,
then build you out from there. I mean, what would you say to that? People who, you know, maybe are thinking it's not a bad thing to know what your exit strategy is. That's a positive as a business owner. And I just wondered what you would say to people, because it is a potential option, isn't it, to go after a business where there are going to be other people out there like me who are ready for a sale.
Yeah, 100%. I think it gets overlooked a fair bit, but I think it all stems back to originally what we're all based on is if you've got that connection, you know, a club's being run with that connection. It's a lot more difficult to take over an existing site if you're trying to strip it back to bare bones and then build back up. You might as well open a brand new one. But if you're purchasing a club which you know has already got a sense of community built, like we focused on massively, for the surrounding area, it's got that reputation. You're not having to change people's beliefs of that business. You can work closely like with yourself and figure out a strategy for potentially existing members, but also how to position yourself within that area. I think there's massive opportunity there. Like within the industry, we know there's so many different types of operations and different setups that it might reach, like for yourself, an area where you are willing to pass it on. And then we bring in an additional tech setup, an additional way of operating that takes it to the next level of membership base or whatever it might be. So I think it should never be overlooked, but also it stems from that relationship side of it. You got to be devil's advocate and say it could go the other way if you're doing it just for financial purposes, and then there's a disagreement, and it's
I understand.
Other than working with just Glenda, because obviously I can imagine that's a massive challenge in itself. But other than working with Glenda, what would you say is the biggest difference in terms of, obviously, because you've got 3 sites that you built from scratch, they're yours, and then obviously Glenda's one you took on and obviously refurbed it, whatever. What would you say the big difference between doing those are, though, if someone was thinking about it?
Yeah, it's there was definitely a lot of education around what you can remove, what you can put back in, how much to do to make it, because obviously there's a lot more investment on the front end because you're purchasing something. So if you look, it's going to cost more. So that was a learning that we knew was going to happen. It's looking at it as more of a long-term plan. From the 2 sites before, we knew what the cost would be. We knew where we would do this, we would do that. This was a lot more of a creative process. So it was, okay, what is it now? What do we think? Working with the existing owner, what have they experienced over the last? So there was a lot more sort of
collaboration, really, right?
Cooperation, mind mapping, creative side to it of getting a full understanding of where it was. And then, like with anything, it's like when you buy a house, there might be things that you don't notice until you're in there, or things that there's always going to be stuff like
them dead bodies under the floorboards.
Yeah, exactly. But if we're building from the ground up, we know exactly what's gone in there. But even Glenda yourself, you took over the building from someone before you as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
It's not like we've operated, but and for a bit of description for guys listening, it's on a street, it's an existing office block building, it's had a history. Whereas in our other sites, we knew it'd been nothing before, or it'd been a warehouse before. So you can look at it as a shell and go, we know what we're working with here. But when you start taking away, like the biggest thing that comes to my mind is, we'll just remove that wall and we'll open that up. And then finding out it's 2 foot deep brickwork and it took weeks to remove it. It made a massive difference, but you don't put that into your plan until you start breaking away the wall.
I had a client once that had to remove a safe, and it was an old bank, and obviously they just thought we'll take down the wall, and the wall actually, to be fair, wasn't that thick. It was only probably double brick. That's all it was for an internal wall. It's obviously unusual, but actually they'd reinforced it with all of the steel pins, and so you couldn't walk in there and just knock the thing down and take the money. But it took them about 6 weeks to knock this wall down and they didn't have a choice. They needed the space. So it took them 6 weeks, and it was just absolute, because as they're chipping the concrete out, they're having to obviously cut down then the steel rods in between. It was so
it's an interesting point. In terms of infrastructure, you've got always to consider that you don't know every single thing that's gone before. Connor, something that really to this day impressed me though, right, is whether you mean it or not, you never look stressed, right? Ever.
Wait till the call's off and then we'll see, yeah.
And I know you might hide it well. Yeah, you might hide it well, but I've always said that about you, when you think about your journey now, and, we'll talk about, what it feels like, what's the difference between having 1 and 4. But we know that regardless whether you've got 1 or 4, it's a lot of responsibility. What would you say for the people that might consider a fitness franchise who have never done fitness before, though? What would be, you looking back on your journey now, what would you say were the top 3 qualities that you had that has helped you as a fitness owner? Because it's a different beast to running a cafe, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's definitely parts you can take from that, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I've always, when I speak to people, is I think the industry for years and years and years has always been treated as a leisure. It's a leisure industry. It's this is how we're going to operate. But I think we really tried to mix the two together and come from a customer service standpoint of silver service, knowing people, building that community, that communication. But what comes with that, just like working in a bar or a coffee shop, is patience. I think that's one of the biggest ones. Having that patience to know it's a long process, but also you're offering a service to hopefully thousands of people. It's not when you work in, say, a bigger company with only 5 clients and you can manage them quite well. You could have 100 people come to you in one day with different personal reasons, or everyone's different. Everyone's going through different things in life. And that's the same for staff and for especially what we've gone through in the last couple of years. So patience is a massive one. I think this probably translates to a lot of business, but having that drive to understand that it's all front loaded with that pre-sale. Yes, working 15 hours, like 14 hours, that's pretty much expected if you are opening a business. You just got to take it all on. But knowing that day in, day out, it's just knocking on those doors like sales and being there as a point of communication and waking up every day and being able to do that to promote within your team and for them to understand that. And then the final thing, which I try to instill in all of the team, all of the management, is without fail having an eye for detail, being able to step away from a situation and put yourself in the shoes of a member. So that's why we always promote for guys to train within the gym who are staff, because when you're doing a bench press, you see a different angle of the ceiling to when you're walking around doing a check. And just having that mindset when they come in the morning, not just following a checklist, but also, okay, if I was a member coming into a gym, what would I want to see?
Amazing.
What would, and that comes from the top down. You've got to come in and be focused on small things and
Yeah.
That was very much a similar approach that Marriott takes. So when I worked for Marriott, I worked for them for 11 years, and that was very much that. So the staff, they had dinner service, they stayed in the hotel, they used the club, they used the swimming pools, and the idea is obviously not just so they can enjoy a great experience, but it's also so that feedback then comes back to sort of go, no, this wasn't right, that wasn't right, we need to change something. And it massively drives. I mean, you don't get a bigger hospitality business than the Marriott in the world, and I still stand by they're probably the best customer service business going, other than maybe Disney, but they've slipped off a bit in recent years. But you're right, if your staff are in the business and they're training, they're using the facilities and everything else, you can't go wrong because they will pick up the challenges that are being faced. So absolutely.
Ryan, I know we talk about it all the time and we're not going to go into it because it would take a long time, but Connor's summary about so many clubs, you can always take back their challenges to a poor pre-sale. So for people out there, you've got to be selling that club for months before it opens, building your cash flow, being ready for opening with a really nice, strong membership base. And Connor, just to finish on the whole Channel Islands story, but that was something that really impressed me as an outsider who had never been in the Anytime brand. When I looked at how much you guys generated on leads well before, I know we had an amazing pre-sale office set up, but the fact that you were sitting with thousands of connections well before that club was anywhere near ready to even sell the first membership was, to me, a massive recipe for success, right?
No, massively. Like we know, having prospects should lead to sales if you've got those processes in place and that onboarding for the team that you've got working with you. I think it all links back to that transparency though as well, because you're selling something which isn't even tangible. We had 3D renders and visuals of the gym, but there wasn't even pieces of equipment or they couldn't have tours. So having that confidence and trust always comes back to as well with those prospects that it all stems from that. And you can have thousands of prospects, but also there's no point of having awful non-quality. Like it all comes down to the quality of the prospect and how that communication's been dealt with. And that's why there's all these touch points that we really focus on for communicating that, always being ready and available. If there is any updates, getting them out there, providing video content, the building site. Because what you see with a lot of places is, I understand it because I've been in that position, is it gets so busy that social media or updates becomes the last thing that you focus on. But to build ready for that opening, it almost needs to be the first thing, because it satisfies a massive percentage of those prospects to be in the know. If they're not, you see some clubs, it's like, we're opening here, and then it gets to a week before and they're like, oh, here's an update of how it's going. But there's a delicate balance, because you don't want to communicate. We know how quickly building sites turn around. So sometimes you can't put up a photo because they're like, well, that's not going to be finished. No way. But then, so you have to time it well, but you need to communicate. Like with anything, you need to be transparent. Otherwise,
it's good advice.
What we do always with our opening dates, we will never communicate. We've never missed one. We will never communicate one until we're 100% certain. We'll build that window into it and be transparent with communication, because we'd rather say at the beginning it's going to be this date and give ourselves 2 weeks than try and push it right to the line and then start off on a bad foot with prospects and members.
Great.
Well, it's nothing worse walking into a club that's hardly finished. I've seen them before, and it doesn't give that first impression. And first impression is everything. I mean, whether that's meeting a new person in the first 30 seconds, whatever theory you believe. But the same applies to a business. So if you walk in, it's not ready and it doesn't quite look right, and whatever that is that person's instant impression. Oh, and you don't. You wanted to walk in and go, wow. So you are better off holding that 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. Yes, it can hit the cash flow sometimes. So some people don't have a choice. They have to go at that point. But if you can hold off, you make sure it's right. And I mean, having done 50 plus pre-sales over the years, I've seen the good, bad, and ugly. And generally, the ones that struggle are the ones that try and force the opening too quickly, and then they don't get it right.
Connor, just a curious question. I think it's one that people would want to ask. I always remember when people went from one club to two clubs, they're like, oh, it's double trouble, right? And then they're like, by the time you get to 4, it's like you don't have the ability to go for perfection. It's got to be really, really good. But you might lose your obsession on things as an owner because of just pure economies of time and scale.
Mm-hmm.
How would you sum up, before we move on? We've got a few other questions for you, but how do you sum up what it feels like to now have 4 versus, is it 4 times the head num, or is it, tell us how would you surmise that?
You do find at times finding it hard to keep a touch on everything, and like you're saying, that eye for detail, and time management does become tough. However, what we've always tried to do is grow from within and promote from within, and we obviously always look externally, but also if there's someone that's doing really well and they're a value to the team and the community that we're building, we can spread levels of management. So like we've had people that have come on as supervisors, then they become a club manager, and now they're area managers. It means from a business point of view, your cost isn't doubling every time, but you're also spreading the responsibility, and they have that fulfillment of progression within their role, which is massive for them as well. Trust is the big challenge, I think, like I linked back to earlier. I find it very difficult, being a bit of a control freak with 4. You want to have, so at first I have all the CCTV on my phone, and you want to be eyeing it, like keeping an eye on it, and because it's a 24-hour business, you're basically leaving the doors open always. So you, in the back of your mind, you have that concern, and it's a brand that you've built. But if, linking back as well to the onboarding that we've got with the team, if I have that trust, which has accrued over a while, then it makes me feel much better about that. And that's what promoting from within helps with. Once you find the right people to work with them and develop alongside them. But yeah, it's a trade-off. Challenges, social media and content, you can't be as bespoke on it unless you have that internally within each club, which we've done. But also the benefit is you have multiple clubs, so you can cross-brand. So you just have to adapt your approach. So social media, rather than it being specifically always one club, you start to partner across the 2. They share the processes. You partner across the 4. So like next year, we'll be doing a holiday challenge between our 4 gyms that members can refer and enter different challenges, and they'll win a free holiday for 2 people and all of their spending money. But then you look at it and you split that cost across 4, and the promotion across 4 is nowhere near as tough as it would have been from 1, and time consuming.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that with the team, with management, so now I have an area manager, 2 and 2, and then now the social media supervisor who's been recently promoted. He oversees all of the clubs and works with people on each level.
That's great.
So I definitely see where people come from, though, that the touch points, it does get more difficult, but if you've got the processes in place to be able to analyze those previous touch points, it's not as tough.
Yeah.
I guess the key is as well, it's about growing you as well. So you've gone from 1 and you sort of go, well, ultimately, when you got 1, you're the manager, although you're doing more than that as an owner. Technically, you're the manager of that site. You're making sure your role itself has changed massively now. So you're effectively a CEO sat above those 4. So I guess it's taken on board going, actually, I'm not that club manager. I don't have to deal with the day-to-day crap that goes with that club. But obviously for you as well, that probably keeps drawing you back, because you know you can deal with it. You know you've got the expertise to deal with it. You just do this, bang, it goes. But obviously now you're the CEO, it's a little bit different on that. When you have to take that sit back and you have to trust. Trust is massive. I think it's probably the number 1 point in all of this. If you've got a decent club manager in there, you have to trust them and allow them to make those mistakes, allow them to grow and develop into their roles, and allow them to sort of go through the process that you went through in Club 1. They're going to go through that as well in their own careers. But I can imagine sat back going, oh, I could have just done. I can't.
Ryan, something that Connor's not going to say, but I've observed in him, and the whole time I've known him, and it was something that I always really picked up on. Though he's a great role model. So Connor, when he goes and visits, will be absolutely the guy that will roll his sleeves up to show how it's done. And I think that's a message out there to the club owners, that you can never get that big, though, that when you come into your own club, you shouldn't want to take a tour. And I know Connor is the first to jump up and take a tour when a customer walks in. And that's showing everyone else that, you know, at that point in time, there is no hierarchy, right? I think that's something that I've always seen.
It's either that or his control freak nature that he just wants to do one or the other.
There is a little bit of that. But it does also help with, I think the guys are probably sick of it now, but we do have Pro Insight sort of undercover checks of all the clubs.
They're fantastic, Pro Insight. I really like the guys at Pro Insight.
And I hold the highest record for any of them. So I always bring that back up in meetings of I think it was 96%. So wow. It was, across the board. So I always bring that up when they're doing tours. But also, I think a big part of having those multiple clubs and what's helped me massively is, I know we speak about reading and literature, like books and things like that, Glenda, about self-development. But one that really hit home for me was this, I think it's Gary Keller's The One Thing book.
Yeah.
It breaks down quite easily to understand, changing from a to-do list and just working your way through it and creating it into a success list, and understanding what it's all well and good ticking off and running through tasks which you thought made you look busy, but you need to, at the beginning of the day or throughout a month, look at it and go, there's probably, you could break it down to one of those tasks which is most crucial for success and for the progress of the company, and you need to let go of those ones from before and work within delegation to grow. So
now, something else, Connor, because I've known you now quite a long time, and I'd like to say this and ask you specifically, as an anytime 4 clubs go, you are sitting with clubs that are amongst the top yielding anytimes in the whole of the UK, right? Yep. And that's something to be mega proud of. So for anybody listening in on this podcast, all these great things that the guys are doing, I can categorically confirm that they're paying off, because we know that one club in your portfolio was in the top 3, right, of the highest yielding anytime in the UK portfolio. So we know that you're getting success in the numbers, and numbers are critical, because you can have all the nice processes, but at the end of the day, you're a business.
Yep,
what would you say for the people listening, though, that's allowed you, despite all the challenges, despite COVID, despite the pressure of, you know, growing at a reasonably fast rate, what would you put that down to then, that you still managed to gain the numbers?
I think, like we said, those processes, they're always going to be there. And that, as much as I don't want to say it, is a tick box exercise. It's not, but once you know that they're taken care of and it's been taught and you're all working collectively towards them, they can work naturally in the background, because it's just systematic, you know, that's taking part every day. But that community side of it's had a massive impact for us. I think people forget the power of compounding and how important it is, especially within this industry of referrals. So the way that we look at it is have one person come on board, but having those touch points of communication after in their member journey to touch base and, do you have any friends that would want to come down? Maybe we can help you work out together, or you can turn 1 to 5 in a matter of no time. And that's why external promotion, we know there's a massive benefit to it, but we convert a lot of people from within. And
I love that message.
Yeah, there's this short-term view of we should be charging for trials. We should be, like, a lot of gyms, I understand cash flow, but also you've got to look at the long-term benefit of not doing that. And yes, in the short term, you lose, say, £7.50, £10. But if someone comes in for 3 trials and you're monitoring them and having contact with them, it's pretty likely that they're going to convert, especially if they know someone in the gym.
The key is it's that journey, isn't it? A lot of clubs, and a lot of the ones I work with, Connor, and it doesn't sound like you're doing this, but a lot of them will literally just hand out that free trial, and then that free trial almost becomes a free guest pass. Mm-hmm. The point of a free trial is it's there to, obviously, for them to enjoy the service and train with their friends, but it's also to encourage them to join. That's the whole point behind it. And if you don't have, so many clubs do social media campaigns with 7-day free trial, and then literally sign them up, take their name and details, and then leave them. And you go, that's utter madness. Why would you ever, one, pay the money to get that person into your club, and then secondly, just allow them to do whatever they want in the club? No touch points, no calls, no, don't link it with a personal trainer, get them in the classes, whatever it is. You have to have a journey there. Otherwise, none of it works. It's just basically throwing out money because you're not gaining anything in it. So what would you say because the one thing you've mentioned quite a few times on the podcast, Connor, is community. Yeah. So obviously the one thing you are doing is referrals, and that's brilliant. What other things do you guys focus on to sort of go, okay, this is how we built the first club. It's all about community. What did we do that was different to your competition that's making you guys create this fantastic community feel in your clubs?
Yeah, I think definitely something that I always come back to when I speak to people about it is we approached it very differently with the first club, and have endeavoured to do that moving forward is recruitment. For years, even as being a gym goer, you start to notice that the same stereotypical type of people are getting recruited into the roles. And I thought, linking back to silver service and that approach of customer service, they don't necessarily have to love fitness. And it's the same as a franchisee. They don't have to be shredded, Arnie looking. It's moved on from that. That's way in the past now. If someone, like our first team was, I think, someone came from working a coffee shop, someone was from a bookshop, and the final person was supermarket, working at Waitrose. But the way that benefited us is the community of people wanting to join a gym has completely grown, and the focus on fitness and health has changed. So say someone came in, they've never been a member of a gym before, but they connect on a personal level with someone that works at a bookshop. They can have that communication. It's a lot more natural than someone coming in and feeling intimidated with only a focus on fitness. Well, I can make you can lose. It
feels like them, doesn't it? They're meeting someone that's like them, rather than some. I've always said this about personal training, Connor. You get these guys that are super fit. Don't get me wrong; they've got amazing bodies and they know how to train clearly. But then you get someone who's overweight, never trained, and whatever, and that you're expecting that person to suddenly warm and go, I can achieve that, and it just doesn't happen, and it frightens them to death. And then you get a normal personal trainer, I'm not saying fat, but not outlandishly muscly, and they have amazing rapport, get great results, and you're like going, that's because that person buys into them personally, not buying into that muscular outfit. So it's definitely, if you can get that feel where people buy into the person.
Yeah,
my mom said people buy from people.
Service, yeah.
Connor, I think that you're onto something there, and I just wanted to stress, when you were doing the last two clubs and bringing people in from the non-fitness sector, they really were focused on service, and we've really got a flavour through everything you've said today that service is really important for you guys, and it's obviously making a difference in your numbers. I think the industry needs to start looking at people who are ready to come back into work. There's so many amazing middle-aged ladies out there who have maybe had a break to have their family, who are now ready to come back into the workplace, might only want to work part-time. You see the amazing results that they've had with bringing women back into the workplace with companies like Salesforce, when they did like Salesforce Mums. I think that our fitness industry need to open up their mindset to not just employing people that are all really, really young or of that stereotype that you talk about. And I think that that's a great message that you're giving us. So I wanted to ask you, what training and development, therefore, do you think that people in our sector are now needing in light of the fact that the industry is changing, especially since the pandemic? What would you say?
That's a really good question. There's obviously so much training development out there in a plethora of things, but we all know that how prevalent it is with mental health and that focus on a different aspect of health and well-being. And they don't have to be experts in it, but having an understanding of it. And if you have an understanding of it, linking back to that community and that people buying from people, you do connect more on a personal level. It would allow you to understand distancing when you're touring someone around the gym, know when certain areas that they want to focus on and build from there. So I think there's so many training courses and assets out there to take benefit of that. Mental health and well-being should be up there massively. And like we were saying, moving away from stereotypical approaches of what a gym needs to be or must be or has to be, from moving towards what do you want it to be? What are you looking for out of this? They might be just maintenance. It might just be wanting to get out. They might be struggling at home, or they just want that sense of belonging somewhere. Or the 24 hours, they want to come in late at night, and we offer that service. So I think people are always looking transactional, but looking from a relationship point of view and a longevity point of view will aid retention, but also people coming into the workplace will feel a lot more benefit out of it and enjoy where they work. And that's why we never penalize people for. So always when we have one-to-ones with the team, we have team meetings, I say, if I come in and I see you spoken to a member for 20 minutes, half an hour, I'm never going to penalize that or have a go at someone for that, because you're supporting that member. You don't know where those ripples, how far they're going to reach, but also retention is a massive factor of it. So it's, I think, understanding people more on a personal level, and the mental health is at the top of the list. And having
you mentioned well-being. You know, when you mentioned well-being there, I'm very aware that the Anytime brand now have that every member gets a well-being check-in. Is that correct? Or a well-being consultation? Any insight there as to how that's going and how has it resonated with members?
Yeah, no, it's very fresh. It's very new. So there's been a lot of training with the guys at all the clubs to try and immerse themselves in it. We've definitely seen positive feedback from it already, and retention and members actually staying for a longer period of time. So from a business point of view, it's massive. So they're
what is it, Connor? Just out of interest, just for the. I mean, obviously you two know what it is.
Yeah, so more of connecting with a coach and not necessarily just for fitness. So weekly check-ins built into the structure of the team to chat with new members, but then also access to the online portal, which Anytime's created, which has different wellbeing courses, videos to learn from, different recipes. So it's not just focused on fitness. It's what the effect of sleep and the ways to improve sleep, but also almost free counselling sort of courses, not on a one-to-one level. So just understanding that there's those different factors, and we're seeing a lot more people transition to us because they're looking for that. There's so many different subscriptions, and should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? There's Athletic Greens, and they're like, that's £80 a month, and then there's this, and you could easily end up spending £400 a month, but still not be getting anywhere because it's just from seeing a higher marketing budget and targeted towards you through social media. So them being able to try different things for free then allows them to set a route that they want to go on personally. And having a coach there, we can recommend certain different things. And then what we're actually going to do from that in our clubs, and then hopefully it expands to others, is offer an additional membership on sort of a platinum offering, which isn't a lot more. It'll be about 30% more a month, but that will include a personal training session with that coach, but access to plans, and then a sit down, free coffee with sit down, things like that. So it's, and access to different discounts within the community. So we partner with local businesses that they potentially work for, and then it gets them into those different areas.
Fantastic.
I keep messing with Connor, Ryan, saying that I'm going to encourage him to be the first club in the Channel Islands that does it with a wellbeing coach.
He definitely has been pushing it, yeah.
I tell you what, I'm sure we can find you a half decent one. I don't know where.
Well, it won't be me.
It won't be Glenda because she's always in some foreign country. Like
you build the capacity in house, Ryan. That's all I'm saying. On that note, Connor, I very much value how well read you are, and I know that you have got your finger on the pulse. You're super passionate about this industry. Where do you see it going in the next 5 years? And what do you think we need to be considering? And I don't think that's all negative. What are the exciting things for the industry? Where do you see it going? Yeah,
I think it's going from strength to strength. I know that for a long time everyone was like virtual's going to take over, bricks and mortar will be gone. I don't see that ever happening. I see it facilitating it and working alongside it, and being a tool to provide access when people can't get in, or an additional benefit, or like our virtual system within the clubs, we get a lot more use than our online platform. So for those listening, it's like an iPad on the exterior of the studios. They can come in, a member can come in at say 10 p.m. and pick from a bank of 500 different classes, whether that's yoga, CrossFit sort of esque classes, or even sort of core little focused ones. But it's been a stepping stone for people getting into actual instructor-led classes. So they've always been intimidated or felt like they wouldn't fit in one of those classes, and they're able to do these online, say at 10 p.m. or come in on a Sunday or whenever that might be, and then have the confidence to step into a community environment with an instructor, and then they build from there. And the social impacts of that, we have members that go for coffees from it, and they come to little Christmas do's, and they do it with instructors. And it's, you don't want to feel like when you finish the shift, you're then checking in and out of the gym. It's not clocking in and out. It's, you want to be happy, that want to know the people in there, you want to build around that. So I think that's where virtual will go. But the biggest change that I see will be, there's a space obviously for boutique gyms, but linking back to Marriott, actually, I think the boutique approach is going to be adopted by all major brands. I think they are going to really focus on implementing different aspects of that, because they see the power that that has.
Yeah, you mean it's like an extension to their already big box club, where they'll have something quite specific that's boutique?
No, I think they'll take the aspects of boutique and put them into their big clubs.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like a niche right within. Yeah.
David Lloyd have already started doing it, haven't they? So David Lloyd,
like with Blaze and stuff
I can't remember what they call it. Is it Blaze or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So they've already started doing it. I tell you what has also started happening, which is interesting. You say that, Connor, especially in the States. What's happening is now they're having centers that are having the different boutiques in one place. So a bit like you have a shopping center that has all your different clothes shops. What's happening now is they're creating these units, and they'll have a yoga studio, they'll have Soul Cycle, they'll have Like an Anytime, they'll have, so you end up having these all under one roof. So you might have a property developer like yourselves, you guys build it, and then you fit in the different franchise. A bit like you quite often see franchises that will buy a Taco Bell, a Costa Coffee, and they own all the franchises in that group. But it's all a different type of food, and I think that's what's growing in America quite fast now, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's the sort of thing that will start shifting over to the UK.
It's a good point. I think that your point, Connor, is there is this whole thing, isn't there, where people are trying multiple options and bringing it in, and not just using even one club these days or one genre. Connor, this is a curveball question. I know that Ryan will finish on a question about advice if you were considering a franchise, and he's got a lot of passion for that area. But I want to ask you something, because it wouldn't be right if I didn't.
Okay.
Now, another part of your journey is having your dad, Steve, who I know you know, I've said to a lot of people that every single time I've ever sat with him, I've learned something, because he's a very successful businessman in his own right, with other phenomenal businesses that he's got. There are a lot of people out there that have family-run businesses, and I just wondered, what advice would you give people who are young in the journey, maybe working with the mother or the father or two brothers? What's your advice for making family-run businesses work? Because I know that you'll always have the good and the challenges, right? But
be careful now, Connor. Your dad might see this.
No. I've had, it wouldn't be right if we didn't mention them, because I've sat in so many meetings with you guys where I've just always came away with something of value, right? So, what would you say is what you learned about tapping into that expertise, is what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, like you sort of mentioned, it is a bit of a tightrope. Because you might be arguing over something in a fit out, and then you've got to go to their birthday for dinner 2 days later. So it's, I think you've got to really have the open conversations of how each other works, where your strengths are, and not beat around the bush about it, because at the end of the day, it can have dramatic impacts on the business. We always link back to, it's a business decision, looking at it from a business point of view. Same as any decision, when you have those tough conversations, you've got to take the personal out of it. You've got to lay out the points. This is why I want to do it. This is why, okay, let's come together and discuss it. But you have those checkouts as well. So you building an approach. I think talking about it as much as you can, not bringing it up in conversation. So I'm sure the rest of the family is not happy about it always, but there's not really any platform where we won't have the conversation, because we know it's better having it then than letting it build and dwell and reacting. It's better to be proactive than reactive. We've always had that approach.
Did you guys define your roles, Connor? Did you and your dad go this, or is it very fluid in terms of who does what? And
no, it was quite pretty defined from the outset. He has obviously the other businesses that he operates, and we came in it together and said, well, I'm going to be operational, and almost as he's provides his expertise in sit down meetings, but more of a silent investor, and used for his expertise in construction was the big thing. Actually,
he's really pulled away now, hasn't he, Connor? Because he's so busy in his other businesses. And total respect to you. This is pretty much it's you full guns blazing with this project now. But isn't it amazing? I guess what I'm trying to get a little nugget on is the fact that you're lucky you have someone so close to you that you can use as a mentor or a coach. Or how important is it for business owners to never be too much of an ego to not ask for a bit of advice? What would be your advice on that?
Yeah, 100%. You can never you always know your gut feeling and what you want to go with, but you can't let pride get in the way. Inspiration can be anywhere, and I'm starting to learn that more and more as I've tried to go this year, a big focus on a self-development route and focus on true circulation of happiness. Yes, there's the business side of it, but there's so many different avenues and aspects. So there's mentors everywhere. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I think there's this big thing that you need to pay monthlies, and everyone's like, oh, well, I need to pay this to get the support. But everyone knows at least someone that had a business or still has one or knows someone that has, and it might cost a lunch once a month. No one's going to say no to a free lunch, as long as you don't make it like a grilling of questions written out and want to run through them and just have that natural conversation. But having inspiration from all areas of life. So I would have previously said, my dad has been an inspiration. I've looked at everything for him to work towards and grow from there. But now I'm starting to understand it was also my grandfather on my mother's side, but even more massively was my mother, who she sacrificed so much for me growing up to be able to learn those things. And you start to become aware of that as you move through life. So having a mentor and inspiration, I think, second, you need it. You need to be able to, it's a very lonely road if you're doing it by yourself, and you can take it on, and you can implode, burn out. You can just need to relieve pressure.
I think that's a brilliant message, Connor, and I know that I'm mega passionate about this area, about entrepreneurs having support networks to ensure that they don't get that loneliness creeping in to the point where they feel like they are alone. There's always a great message you give there. There's always someone. You just have to go looking. I want to just, before I pass it over to Ryan to close out on his last question, I just want to put on record there that I think that there is this unconscious bias where when we get older, we think that everybody we learn from should be older than us. And actually, I'm going to say, Ryan, I know I've said it to you a lot, that I've learned so much from Connor. And, Connor's a lot younger than me. But I think that we have a generation coming through that are so clever on areas that I'm not so good on. So, for example, I reach out to people all the time about tech or, things that I'm not so comfortable on. And by default, they tend to be a lot younger than me, right? So I think that we sometimes, with unconscious bias, think that the people we need to reach to for advice are, they've either done it longer or they're older. And actually, that's a fallacy. You just got to look at what's out there for the expertise that they bring, right? So great advice there.
100%. And that's something that I've really thought a lot about and starting to work towards is networking. And I think almost people think it's not a dirty word, but it's just a bunch of people stood up and introduced themselves and trying to sell their own wares. But I really gone a lot more harder on networking and actually building a networking group myself for younger people and young people within business who have started their business, so you can build those relationships. And there's a reason for years that pubs and golf courses and gentlemen's club, there's things like that was where business was done, because people, it's relationships. Yes, there's, like you're saying, with tech, younger people learning about it, but the art of selling, the art of building a rapport with someone, understanding someone's emotional tells is never going to die off, and that only comes from networking.
But the great thing is as well, networking's not just about going to a thing, standing up for 60 seconds, because that's what people think. I mean, I hate them. I'll be honest. I don't feel comfortable. But I think generally I'm really good at networking on the other platforms that I do. I mean, I've got a huge network. There's very few people that don't know me on LinkedIn, for instance. And that's a networking thing. And I've made a huge number of connections. I mean, Glenda, for instance, that was through a Zoom call, wasn't it, Glenda? Yeah. And it's you're right. That network is important. How you do it is different for everybody. It's how you feel comfortable. So whether it's down the golf course, a networking event, through LinkedIn, through PerformX and places like that, there's various ways of doing it. But absolutely building those right connections. And if you can do it at your age, obviously I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming you're under 30, Connor. But if you're doing it at your age and you've got that in you to grow, imagine the connections you can build over the next 30, 40 years as you go through your career. It's absolutely fantastic. So yeah.
Ryan, just conscious of time, do you want to close out by asking Connor?
I've got a couple of questions for Connor just before we finish.
Far away.
First off is obviously you've had a really successful couple of years, 2-3 years as a franchisee. What would you say is your best advice for anyone, even if it's not any time? Obviously, you're passionate about those, but anybody who's considering looking at a franchise, what would you say to them as the sort of things to look into? Why they should consider it, and what sort of not pitfalls as such, but what things should they be wary of when they're looking at a franchise?
I think the biggest one, which, like, if you're purchasing anything, big business decisions, is you've got to do your due diligence. You can't just do a little bit of it and come back to it and things like that. So we did it in all areas. I actually trained in and any time for a year before we made the decision.
Wow.
Just because there's things that you see on the ground level like that you don't see in the flip deck of slideshows for franchise. So there's different little areas where you need to learn that. But probably even bigger than that is to be clear on what you want out of the relationship. There's a lot of promises that can be made. There's a lot of focuses that can be made, but for you to be able to say, this is what I'm looking for, this is where we want to grow. And you've got people always underestimate what you can do over a longer period of time, but you need to have your eyes on that. It can't be a short-term fix. It's a relationship. You are working with someone. So you've got to connect, a bit like buying an existing club. You've got to be on the same wavelength, because you never know what's coming down the line. There's a lot of power in a master franchise. And if you're not on board with the same route and understand where they're going, you could be 3 years in and really be not anywhere near the same decision-making process, and it could go foul quite quick. So having that, and probably the biggest one that we focused on was find one with a fixed monthly cost rather than based on profits.
Yeah.
So, I'm a big believer in that, because I don't understand, if you're doing well, why the percentage should go up or what you're paying. So
I've never understood that one either. I've seen franchisees paying out 10-12 grand a month because their club's doing really well, yet their profits not necessarily increasing. You got going, how is that fair? Because they're not getting any more from the franchisee or franchisor. You're getting the same support whether it's a grand profit or 40 grand profit. Nothing changes. They don't suddenly start sending loads of staff over to help you sell more or anything like that. And you're right. So, but the great thing is, with all those things in mind, it sounds like you made a brilliant decision, because you're doing really well. You're clearly happy with the decision you made, because you're smiling about it. I've seen, trust me, I've seen many that don't smile about being part of a franchise. So obviously that's working. So I guess to end it, because obviously we have been on for quite a while now. you've already said inspiration-wise, you've got your mum, you've got your dad, you've got your grandparents. Now, we like to take it out of that a little bit because we appreciate that family, and probably more so in your case because of your journey, is going to have a huge impact on what you do. But just so other people can have a look at other inspirational areas, anybody else or anything out there that you look for inspiration to go, I quite like that, and that's what I follow. I look into that.
Yeah, I find inspiration in books that I read all the time. Self-development books got laughed at for so long. People, I don't know why, within the British culture of wanting to improve yourself was seen as crazy. There's so many books within it. I don't know, being at a younger age and reading them, people are like, why are you reading that? It's like, well, it's a journey of growing. So I definitely recommend for people to look into. There's best-selling books and about habits and Atomic Habits. I've read lots of times. But then from a inspiration for how to structure moving forward, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I've read probably 10 times. So there's some of the books that I go back to. I know they're repeated a lot on podcasts, but there's a reason they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I've taken a big approach on social media of removing anything which wasn't to my benefit, really, of motivation or inspiration. So there's a podcaster and he does the mindset mentor that I listen to a lot. So that's Rob Dial. So he's focused on all aspects of self-development and inspiration and how he's built that coaching business. And then now I've just started taking inspiration from, let's see if I get his last name right, Alex Sipakowski, which is a property focus, because I'm looking to expand into that a bit more and build a portfolio around that. And it's just, as you've got to be aware of wading through the crap, if I'm honest, of online. You can fall into a trap of someone promising that they've achieved this and you should do this and you should follow this, but without the factual basis of what they have achieved, you can
I think that's really important.
And that links back to due diligence again. You've got to, it takes a bit of work. You can't just expect for quick results. So inspiration from those. And I don't really take it from big popular figures, because I think sort of popular culture ones and focusing on that is such a facade nowadays that you don't know what's true and what's not.
No, exactly. Sometimes I think they play to the audience, don't they, rather than actually what they believe, which is a bit of a shame. But I guess what you have to do with those people is go back to their early stuff. Their early stuff probably has real value, but as they've got bigger, they're sort of going, well, which because they'll be looking through their social, going, which post worked? We need more on that, and that's how they work. It's a business in the end of the day. So I think that's a great place to finish. I think I know Glenda does nothing but sing your praises. So it's been fantastic to get you on, Connor, and finally meet you. So absolutely, I wish you all the best with your 4 clubs, and probably next time we get you on, you'll probably be your 20th. So with the speed.
No, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
So thank you very much for coming on, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, Connor, I just want to reiterate that it's been a chapter of my life that I want to never forget, because it's been an amazing journey, and I've been a tiny part of your journey, and seeing you go on from there and doing what you're doing is inspiring me. And I want to wish you and Steve, and over the next 2 years, 3 years, I know that it's just going to keep growing, and I want to wish you the very best of luck, Connor. It's very well deserved, and thanks for having the time to come on and share a bit of that with us. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure's all mine. It's been amazing to chat through everything, and I'm 100% sure it's not the end of the journey, and we'll move on to other things and work together on them, Glenda, so don't worry about that. And
no. Yeah, thank you, Connor.
Again.
Much appreciated.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will speak to you soon.
You too. Thank you very much.
Bye.